so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Oath of allegiance of a new member. Announcements by presiding officer. Assembly bills sent back from cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. Petitions, papers, presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission, select committees. Questions to secretaries. Questions for oral answers.
Question number 24, Minority Leader.
Good morning, Madam Presiding Officer. This question is asked to the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment. With reference to the connector road between Station Hill Road and Roxborough, Bloody Bay Road in Roxborough, in January 22nd of 2016, Stories of the Day, Office of the Chief Secretary newsletter, it was reported that the bridges may not be here in time for carnival activities in 2016. Therefore, a temporary bridge was installed. Approximately $3 million was paid for the bridge that is yet to be installed. I'm hereby asking, what is the status of that bridge that was procured? Who is the temporary bridge currently installed, rented / or leased from? And C, how much was already paid on the bridge currently being used? Thank you, Madam.
Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, the newsletter mentioned two bridges. The two 100-foot Bailey bridges purchased by the division are currently in storage on the division's compound. The bridge installed was neither rented nor leased. However, it was loaned to us by the Ministry of Works and Transport. There have been no payments made on the current bridge that is installed, as it was a loan through a collaboration with the Ministry of Works and Transport. Thank you, Madam President.
Question number 25, Minority Leader.
To the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Education, Innovation and Energy. In a January 26, 2017 interview, the Chief Secretary indicated he did not have a crime plan for Tobago, and that security is a central government issue. Tobago has recorded 12 murders as at December 6, 2017, and ACP Moore stated in September 2017 that murders had increased by 200%. That is, at that time, there was 8 murders in Tobago. What is the crime plan for Tobago? Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Chief Secretary and Secretary of Education, Innovation and Energy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. It appears that some people cannot control themselves, notwithstanding where they happen to be at particular points in time.
Answer the question.
Madam Presiding Officer, the 6th schedule of Act 40 of 1996, under matters for which the Assembly shall not be responsible, cites as one of 11 matters the matter of national security. That notwithstanding, the Chief Secretary is of the view that the Assembly has a duty of care generally to the residents of Tobago. In that context, the Chief Secretary has been meeting regularly with senior officers of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service on the issue of crime in Tobago. At these meetings, the general state of play is discussed and views exchanged and agreed upon. May I advise this Honorable House that some of the agreed measures have already been implemented. For example, regular press conferences. As a matter of fact, the first press conference by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service would have taken place on the 8th of December. And in that press conference, members of the public would have been alerted to those activities that can reasonably be told to the public in respect of its crime-fighting initiative, and as well in respect of the results that would have been achieved. May I also advise this Honorable House that the detection rate given to all the divisions in terms of a minimum threshold was expected to be 30%. There are 4 divisions in Trinidad and Tobago that did not meet that threshold. I am happy to report that Tobago was not one of them. Indeed, Madam Presiding Officer, Tobago came in at 34% above the minimum threshold, and that 34% is 3% higher than the national average.
Madam Presiding Officer,
Do you have a question?
I wish to ask or restate. I asked the question, what is the crime plan for Tobago? And the question has not been answered by the Chief Secretary. He needs to answer the question, what is the crime plan for Tobago? I'm asking this on behalf of Tobagonians because we have a fiduciary responsibility.
Fiduciary?
Know that. Answer the crime plan.
A fiduciary?
Could we have some order, please?
Answer the question.
Okay.
Be responsible.
Madam Presiding Officer, I suspect that we may have to, among some classes through community development, for some on the other side. No crime plan, Madam Presiding Officer, is ever expressed or stated to the public. Because clearly, those who are engaged in deviant behaviors, and in fact, those who are so predisposed to behave in deviant and criminal ways would be able to know what your strategy is. No wonder some of them behaved the way they did on Tuesday. Deviancy, criminal intent.
You did not answer the question.
Look at that. You are getting to the point where you're behaving like a leader.
Excuse me.
Disgusting.
Did you request to speak, Assemblyman Augustine?
Disgusting.
So, can we have some order in the House? I hear you, Mr. Duke, Assemblyman Duke. However, whether you like the answer or not, it has been answered at this point.
Madam Presiding Officer, I would prefer the Chief Secretary to say he has no answer than to give
Assemblyman
answer the
Duke,
question.
you cannot say what the Chief Secretary should be saying. You asked a question, he answered, and we are going to move on. Question number 26 by the Minority Leader.
I have been too quiet for this.
Thank you again. Madam Presiding Officer. We can't wait for 3 years to come. Can't come fast enough. Question to the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Education, Innovation and Energy, which he lacks. How much money has been spent on the Millshire building at the corner of Claude Newell Highway and Shervan Road since the Tobago House of Assembly commenced paying a lease for the property? I hope that one can be answered. Thank you, Madam President.
Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Of course, sensible questions will always elicit the required response. The Assembly entered into a build, operate, lease, and transfer arrangement for the construction of an administrative building to house divisions of the Assembly in a modern, environmental friendly, and OSH compliant facility of approximately 87,800 square feet. A decision was taken to house 3 divisions at this facility: food production, forestry and fisheries, settlements, urban renewal, and public utilities, as well as the licensing department of the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries, and the Environment. I am pleased to inform this House that quarterly payments of $4,444,234.18, inclusive of VAT, commenced on February 1st, 2016, and payments up to January 31st, 2018 would total $32,353,873.44. May I advise this House that the payments are made in advance and quarterly payments.
Question number 27. Member for Palatuvia, Lansome, Speyside.
Question to the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Education, Innovation and Energy. The woes faced by Tobagonians with the inter-island ferry service continues for the foreseeable future, with the central government rejecting the latest tendering process conducted by the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Can the Chief Secretary provide details of actions taken by himself and or the Executive Council in an effort to get the central government to ease the inter-island transportation pains of Tobagonians?
Chief Secretary and Secretary of Education, Innovation and Energy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I had previously provided information in this House concerning the ferry service. Since that time, it is now public knowledge that the latest attempt by the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago to acquire a passenger ferry has failed. The Cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago has agreed to the appointment of a subcommittee headed by the Honorable Minister of Finance to undertake the exercise. In communication with the Honorable Minister, I am advised that the process of acquiring an appropriate passenger ferry to service the route is proceeding satisfactorily.
Follow-up question. Is the Chief Secretary satisfied with the pace and the measures taken by the Cabinet in Trinidad?
The Chief Secretary understands the process is fraught with difficulty, and the Chief Secretary understands that this government of Trinidad and Tobago is doing what is required to ensure that a ferry is acquired.
Question 28. Member for Palatuvia, Lansome, Speyside.
Question number 28 to the Chief Secretary and Secretary of Education, Innovation and Energy. Reports from the former second engineer on board the Cabo Star, Mr. Edward Lasuk, revealed that the boat is not safe by virtue of 1, a continual oil leak, 2, non-functional rescue vessel, and 3, the general unseaworthiness of the vessel. A, can the Chief Secretary tell this House if he has had conversations with the Minister with responsibility for transportation about the safety of the Cabo Star? And B, also, what measures will be taken to protect users of this boat?
Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The answer to part A of the question is yes. And the answer to part B of the question, Madam Presiding Officer, information provided to me indicates that there is no continual oil leak on the Cabo Star. And 2, that there is no non-functional rescue vessel. Madam Presiding Officer, the Cabo Star is in possession of a mandatory certificate and a permit to operate in this country. Such certificate and permit is issued by the Maritime Services Division, the appropriate authority under the law in Trinidad and Tobago. May I add, Madam Presiding Officer, that regular checks are carried out as well to ensure compliance.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Given that the Chief Secretary has indicated that he has conversations with the Honorable Minister, can the Chief Secretary explain to this House what accounts for the consistent malfunctioning of the vessel and the fact that the vessel seemingly cannot travel above 11 knots?
Chief Secretary.
Madam Presiding Officer, that's question. If it's properly posed, I shall respond to it. That's a new question.
Question 29 by the Minority Councillor.
Good morning to the Secretary of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor. On September 26, 2017, the sod-turning ceremony for the Bell Garden multipurpose facility occurred. Work has commenced on the site. A, please provide the total number of workers currently on that construction site, and B, specifically provide the number of individuals working at that construction site with listed residences or addresses as Pembroke, Glamorgan, Richmond, Bell Garden, Kendall, or Argyle.
Secretary of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, members of this Honorable House, and to all the listening and viewing audience, let me take this opportunity to wish you season's greetings in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. The construction of the new Bell Garden Multipurpose Community Center began on Thursday, 27 September 2017, one day after the sod-turning ceremony at the site. During the preparatory groundworks at the site, 24 workers were employed. 22 of these workers reside in Tobago East, specifically from the areas listed, which are Pembroke, Glamorgan, Richmond, Bell Garden, Kendall, and Argyle. Madam Presiding Officer, I am happy to report to this Honorable House that construction is currently on schedule for an August 2018 delivery. The foundation of the building is nearing completion, and the next phase of this project, which continues in January, is the construction of the main building columns and a retaining wall. Before I take my seat, Madam Presiding Officer, It is important to note that at different phases of this project, a variety of skill sets would be required, which may or may not reside in Tobago East. So the number of residents employed at the job site in any particular phase will fluctuate. I thank you.
Okay.
Follow-up. On other job sites, there are specifications for the number of workers who must come from the area where construction is being done. Does the same apply to the contract for this site?
Madam Presiding Officer, this is a completely different question that was not listed, and this will be answered when it is on the order paper at the next sitting. Thank you.
Question 30 by Minority Councillor.
To the Secretary of Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries, with respect to the board of the Tobago Cassava Products Limited, please provide the following information. Why was the current chairperson, Ms. Patlin Titus, removed as chairperson in March 2017, specifically outline the number of allegations brought against her and whether these allegations were investigated and resolved? B, given that Ms. Titus was chairman of the board from 2013 to 2017, outside of that March to November period, please provide an outline of Ms. Titus's track record, including the number of new farmers recruited and contracted to provide cassava to the company, the total acreage under cassava production for the company, the process that has been put in place to assure quality of products, and the amount of revenue brought in by the TCPL under her tenure. And finally, please identify the names and positions of the new board members as of December 1st, 2017.
Secretary of Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. Special good morning to one and all. Season greetings. Madam Presiding Officer, it was brought to my attention that Ms. Titus is exploring her legal options as it relates to these matters. So question A and B, I was advised by legal counsel not to make any comments. However, I'll be happy to answer question C. The present board members, Patlin Titus, Chairman, Gary Melville, Deputy Chairman, Tricia Beckles, Director, Darlene Smart, Director, Carlos Dillon, Director. Thank you, Madam President.
Question number 31 by Minority Councillor.
It's on. It's on. It's on. To the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy, please provide an update on the operations of the Capital of Paradise. This is the fishing vessel procured by the THA, and that update should include the volume of seafood caught and sold from February 1st, 2017 to October 31st, 2017, and the monetary value of the seafood caught and sold during that period.
Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. In answering this question posed by the Minority Councillor, I want the Hansard to reflect that, and I'm sure the Minority Councillor is aware, just as she asked the question before regarding cassava, that FIPCOT is not under the purview of the Division of Finance, it's under the purview of the Division of Food Production, but to ensure that the question is answered, that the information is put out there, I will present the information to the House, and to thank my, in the spirit and the season of giving and to be magnanimous. In response to question, to the A part of the question for 2017, the total, the weight of the tuna caught, as I'm not sure if the honorable member is aware that the vessel, what they're primarily looking for is yellowfin tuna, and for 2017 they would have caught 31,922 pounds of tuna, as well as 11,240.8 pounds of what you might call bycatch to date. As at October 2017, the total bycatch was 9,608.8 pounds as at October. In terms of part B of the question, as it relates to the monetary value, international sales of the yellowfin tuna total $187,802.25 US dollars, and if we convert that at an exchange rate of 6.62 TT dollars to $1 US, that will total $1,243,250.89. In terms of the total retail sales of the bycatch, that will total $128,760.50 TT dollars in total sales to date. To be more specific, as at October 2017, the total bycatch sales stood at $112,357.50. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Whereas the Treasury Division of the Ministry of Finance of the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago issued a public notice to move the date of government salaries to December 20th, 2017, and pensions to December 21st, 2017, and whereas the Tobago House of Assembly, for the most part, adhered to this notice and paid its employees, including all members of this House, on time and in keeping with this notice, and whereas many workers in the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, unlike other teaching workers, are yet to be paid salaries because of the decision was taken to move the entire staff into an incomplete building during the time of processing payments, and whereas the Executive Council maintains that preparations for moving started well in advance of this period, be it resolved that this House commits to paying all workers in the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development by whatever means necessary, so as to ensure that those workers also enjoy their Christmas holidays.
I empathize with any worker not being paid on time, whether it is a Tobago House of Assembly worker or a worker of the private sector, whether it is at Christmas time or any other time. The minority therefore submitted this motion to debate those challenges. However, a motion of adjournment has specific guidelines. And whilst we may all agree that the matter raised is a definite matter in the way it was framed, and it is deemed urgent as persons may be affected negatively by the current challenges alluded to in the motion, we have to accept that the staff of the health sector is a small subset of the public. And therefore, according to a motion of adjournment, it has to affect a large sector or the whole island. It was just a few months ago that the minority moved a motion based on the transportation issues, and it was accepted because it was deemed to affect all persons on the island. However, this motion I have to deny, given the fact that it is a subsector of the public that we are speaking to.
Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries.
Secretary for Health, Wellness, and Family Development.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And may I extend season's greetings to my Assembly colleagues and the minority members on the occasion of and celebration of the birth of Christ. For all who believe that that is so, for this season and beyond, we look forward to facing those challenges of 2018 as we have done with this year. Permit me, Madam Presiding Officer, to briefly place on the table this particular issue. But before I do that, you know, as the siren passed by, there was some concern with respect to, and some persons becoming afraid. If this bear wasn't of gold, I would share it with you, because I would share it with you. May I remind you as well that this particular portfolio that I hold, I am charged with a most noble responsibility. It is my intention to discharge that to the letter, including providing and protecting those who are victims of domestic violence. It is my expectation that in the coming year, yes? Sorry.
Honorable Member,
Yes.
you provided a statement,
Yes.
and therefore you have to read the statement.
Good, I would. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, a call to service is a higher order activity. Mine has been a commitment to serve. A call to representation of employees, while a most important undertaking, ought not to be abused or exploited. While those who posture that they have the interests of workers at heart, this is not clearly the case. On assuming office in January of 2017, the following were observed: gaping holes in the ceiling, newspaper being used to absorb water, caution tape to cordon off the area. Indeed, this was an unacceptable work environment. Mold everywhere affecting our employees. This most deplorable situation, about which the minority leader was well aware because he embarked on industrial action, such that action was taken to adjust the working hours for employees.
Madam Presiding Officer, on the order. She's imputing improper motives. I was not a minority in that capacity.
Assemblyman Dew, this is a statement.
But she must speak a correct statement.
Mr. Assemblyman, this is a statement. She's reading the statement. She is reading the statement. Okay? Allow the statement to be read.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. So the matter of the accommodation for our employees was an urgent one for all of us. So following 3 years of negotiations and a contract entered into in August of 2016, which I think was a good decision, but not implemented by the present accounting officer, sorry. And further to that, Madam Presiding Officer, August 23rd, 2017, the Executive Council approved a variation of the 2016 contract to retrofit the building such that it would be more acceptable for the relocation of our staff, more particularly the first group to be relocated by November 2017, the social services and social welfare departments. By October 23rd, as well, 2017, the retrofitting, including partitioning and installation of desks, were completed, and again, communication was sent such that the administrator was expected to commence planning as indicated previously, and indicated that notices should be sent to contractors and or landlord that we will vacate the previous location, number 2 Glen Road, by December 15, 2017. And so that we had October, November, and half of December to do this activity. And this was indeed the second effort made. November 29, 2017, communication again sent to the administrator to address these issues, to speak to the security issues, housekeeping, hospitality, parking arrangements, and the conduct of simulations. December 1st, 2017, inquiry into whether or not the administrator advised the staff accordingly. This was confirmed that all heads of departments were reminded of the move, and each employee should be given individual notices about the relocation. December 7th, written notices were also to be sent to the Union, OSH, Fire and Public Health on all matters related to the move. The status of voice and data extended for over 5 months, which at the present time remain outstanding. However, interim arrangements have been made. December 18th, tours of the building were conducted with OSH and PSA representatives led by the administrator. December 19th, a meeting was held with the differently abled and special needs community by myself as secretary, during which period the minority leader, PSA President Assemblyman Watson Duke, held a meeting with staff on the ground floor. The meeting morphed into a boisterous, aggressive mob led by himself. Present among them was his colleagues on the other side, Councillor Faith, Yisrael, and Fali Augustine. I wondered what was their role in this matter. The mob proceeded to disrupt or attempted to disrupt the meeting with this most vulnerable group of persons, banging on the gypsum wall and shouting about late pay, inadequate spaces, and dusty workspaces. I recalled a mentally ill person who was among us that I recall that they mentioned that is a mentally ill person, and a call was made for my resignation. I know that these genetical issues run in families, and I'm sure that it does not run in mine, but run in that of the minority leader.
Secretary.
Sorry.
Again, I caution you, this is a statement.
Yes.
Please stick to what you have submitted.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I apologize. Unfortunately, members of the differently abled and special needs community were subject to this callous behavior. One must ask, why will one want to remain in a building that is unfit, that the environment is inappropriate for our staff? I must also say that the administrator relocated herself from that same head office after identifying health concerns in her space. She did so without informing myself or the staff, so it was an unsafe environment for her. I have been informed that most of our monthly paid workers have already received their December salaries. However, time books for some of the daily paid workers have been submitted late, and this has resulted in late payments. Interestingly, for the last Christmas season, all monthly paid workers were paid, and interestingly, for the last Christmas period, workers were not paid on time for Christmas, and there was no relocation. The new workspace is adequate and a better accommodation than the previous one, in that we have resolved many of those issues that now challenge our staff. All health concerns now being resolved. The Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development commits to providing a comfortable working environment for all our staff. I thank you.
Personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sitting of the Assembly and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary, public business, executive council business, private business, motion. Chief Secretary and Secretary of Education, Innovation and Energy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to His Excellency Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, SC, ORTT, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and the other members of his family, the season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a peaceful New Year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to His Excellency, the President.
Members, the question proposed. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to His Excellency Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, SC, ORTT, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and the other members of his family, the season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a peaceful New Year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to His Excellency the President.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I'd like to second this motion.
Members, the question now put. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to His Excellency Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, SC, ORTT, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and the other members of his family, the season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a peaceful New Year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to His Excellency, the President. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Sorry? I didn't hear any names. Did you? Are there any abstinent? Any persons abstaining? Okay, so The clerk proceed with the division.
Yes.
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 Councillor Agatha Carrington. Assistant Secretary Sheldon Cunningham. Assistant Secretary Marisha Osman. Assistant Secretary Shamari Hector. Assistant Secretary and Deputy Presiding Officer Ansel Dennis. Assemblyman Frali Augustine.
Abstain.
Minority Leader
Abstain.
Councillor Fates. 13 for, 3 abstentions.
Thank you. The motion is carried. The next motion is by the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, his family, and other members of the Cabinet and their family, the season's greetings for a happy Christmas and God's blessings in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted to the Clerk of the Assembly, to the Honorable Prime Minister.
Honorable members, the question proposed is be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, his family and other members of Cabinet and their families, the season's greetings for a happy Christmas and God's blessings in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Honorable Prime Minister.
Madam Presiding Officer, I second this motion.
Members, the question now put, be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, his family and other members of Cabinet and their families, the season's greetings for a happy Christmas and God's blessings in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Honorable Prime Minister. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against?
No. Division.
Any persons abstaining? Okay.
Councillor Kwesi Devines.
Aye.
Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles.
Yes.
Deputy Chief Secretary Joel Jack.
Yes.
Councillor Nadine Stewart Phillips. Secretary Hayden Spencer. Secretary Jomo Jack. Jomo Pitt, sorry. Secretary Marcel Melville Jack. Secretary Clarence Jacob. Councillor Dr. Agatha Carrington. Assistant Secretary Sheldon Cunningham. Assistant Secretary Marisha Osman. Assistant Secretary Shamari Hector. Assistant Secretary Deputy Presiding Officer Ansel Dennis. Assemblyman Frali Augustine. Minority Leader Mr. Watson Duke.
No.
Councillor Faith. No. 13 for, 3 against.
The motion is carried. The next motion is to be moved by the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the opportunity. Unfortunately, I will not be able to move such a motion to wish anyone in the central government a Merry Christmas, as long as there are persons in Tobago without a paycheck. We as a minority bench are unable to do such, as we have learned a very important statement: dance a yard before you dance abroad. So I want to thank you, and I'll wish all those within here a Merry Christmas, if they can. Thank you.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move the following motion. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extends season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year to the Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives and her family, the Leader of the Opposition and her family, and other members of the House of Representatives and their families. And be it resolved that the term of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Clerk of the House of Representatives and the Leader of the Opposition.
Question. Honorable members, the question proposed by the Deputy Presiding Officer. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year to the Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives and her family, the Leader of the Opposition and her family, and other members of the House of Representatives and their families. And be it resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Clerk of the Representatives, Clerk of the House of Representatives, and the Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Presiding Officer, I second this motion.
Members, the question put. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extends season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year to the Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives and her family, the Leader of the Opposition and her family, and other members of the House of Representatives and their families. And be it resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Clerk of the House of Representatives and the Leader of the Opposition. All in favor? Aye. All against?
Division.
I didn't hear the response to all against.
We abstain.
Okay. Councillor Kwesi Devines.
Yes.
Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles.
Yes.
Deputy Chief Secretary Joel Jaff.
Yes.
Councillor Nadine Stewart Phillips.
Yes.
Secretary Hayden Spencer. Yes. Secretary Joe Mupit. Secretary Marcelin Melville Jack. Yes. Secretary Clarence Jacob. Councillor Dr. Agatha Carrington. Yes. Assistant Secretary Sheldon Cunningham. Assistant Secretary Marisha Osman. Yes. Assistant Secretary Shamari Hector.
Aye.
Assistant Secretary Ansel Lennis.
Aye.
Assemblyman Fali Augustine.
Abstain.
Minority Leader Watson Duke.
Abstain.
Minority Councillor Dr. Faith Lee Israel.
Abstain.
13 for, 3 against. 3 abstain. Sorry. The motion is carried. The next motion is by the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Family Development.
Madam Presiding Officer, be it resolved that this Honorable House extends the Honorable Mr. Justice Ivo Archie, ORTT, Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, his family, and other members of the judiciary and their families the season's greetings for a happy Christmas and God's blessings in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Honorable Prime Minister.
The question proposed, be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to the Honorable Mr. Justice Ivor Archie of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, his family and other members of the judiciary and their families, the season's greetings for a happy Christmas and God's blessings in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Honorable Prime Minister. To the Honorable Chief Justice.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I will second this motion.
Members, the question put. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to the Honorable Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, ORTT, Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, his family and other members of the judiciary and their families, the season's greetings for a happy Christmas and God's blessings in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Honorable Chief Justice. All in favor? Aye. All against? Those abstaining?
Yes, yes. Go for division.
Councillor Kwesi Devines.
Aye.
Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles.
Yes.
Deputy Chief Secretary Joel Jack.
Yes.
Councillor Nadine Stewart Phillips.
Yes.
Secretary Hayden Spencer.
Yes.
Secretary Jomo Pitts.
Yes.
Secretary Marcel Melville Jack.
Aye.
Secretary Clarence Jacob.
Yes.
Councillor Dr. Agatha Carrington.
Yes.
Assistant Secretary Sheldon Cunningham.
Yes.
Assistant Secretary Marisha Osman. Assistant Secretary Shamari Hector.
Aye.
Assistant Secretary Ansel Dennis.
Aye.
Assemblyman Farley Augustine.
Abstain.
Minority Leader Watson Duke.
Abstain.
Minority Council Dr. Faith B. Israel.
Abstain.
13 for, 3 abstentions.
Motion is carried. The next motion by the Secretary of Tourism, Culture and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year to the Honorable President of the Senate and her family and other members of the Senate and their families. And be it further resolved that in terms of this resolution be transmitted to the Clerk of the Assembly, by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Clerk of the Senate.
The question proposed, be it resolved that this Honorable House extends season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year to the Honorable President of the Senate and her family and other members of the Senate and their families. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Clerk of the Senate.
Madam Presiding Officer, I second this motion.
The question put, be it resolved that this Honorable House extends season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year to the Honorable President of the Senate and her family and other members of the Senate and their families. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Clerk of the Senate. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Those abstaining?
Yes, yes,
Division, ma'am, thanks.
Councillor Kwesi Devines.
Aye.
Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles. Deputy Chief Secretary Joel Jack. Councillor Nadine Stewart Phillips. Secretary Hayden Spencer. Secretary Jomo Pitt. Secretary Marcel Melville Jack. Secretary Clarence Jacob. Councillor Dr. Agatha Carrington. Assistant Secretary Sheldon Cunningham. Assistant Secretary Mauricia Osman. Assistant Secretary Shamari Hector. Assistant Secretary Ansel Dennis. Assemblyman Fali Augustine. Minority Leader Watson Duke. Councillor Dr. Faith Lee Israel. 13-4, 3 abstentions.
The motion is carried. Next motion will be moved by the Secretary of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Fix me jacket. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy, Member of Parliament for Tobago East and Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Honorable Shamfa Kodjo, Member of Parliament for Tobago West and Minister of Tourism, and their families, the season greetings for a blessed and joyful Christmas and God's guidance in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy and Honorable Shamfa Kodjo and their families.
Members, the question proposed, be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy, Member of Parliament for Tobago East and Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Honorable Shamfa Kodjo, Member of Parliament for Tobago West and Minister of Tourism, and their families, the season's greetings for a blessed and joyful Christmas and God's guidance in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy and Honorable Shamfa Kodjo and their families.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I second this motion.
Honorable members, the question put, be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy, Member of Parliament for Tobago East and Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Honorable Shamfa Kodjo, Member of Parliament for Tobago West and Minister of Tourism and their families, the season's greetings for a blessed and joyful Christmas and God's guidance in the new year. And be it further resolved that the terms of this resolution be transmitted by the Clerk of the Assembly to the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy and Honorable Shamfa Kodjo and their families. All in favor? Aye. All against? No.
Division, please.
Councillor Kwesi Devines.
Aye.
Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles.
Yes.
Deputy Chief Secretary Joel Jack.
Yes.
Councillor Nadine Stewart Phillips.
Yes.
Secretary Hayden Spencer.
Yes.
Secretary Jomo Pitt.
Yes.
Secretary Marcel Melville Jack. Secretary Clarence Jacob.
Yes.
Councillor Dr. Agatha Carrington. Assistant Secretary Sheldon Cunningham. Assistant Secretary Mauricia Osman. Assistant Secretary Shamari Hector. Assistant Secretary Ansel Dennis. Assemblyman Fali Augustine.
No.
Minority Leader Watson Duke.
No.
Minority Councillor Dr. Faith B. Israel. No. 13-4, 3 against.
The motion is carried. The next motion by the Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to the presiding officer and her family and the Chief Secretary and other members of the Tobago House of Assembly and their families season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and God's guidance in the new year.
The question proposed, be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to the presiding officer and her family and the Chief Secretary and other members of the Tobago House of Assembly and their families season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and God's guidance in the new year.
Presiding officer, I stand to second the motion as proposed by the Leader of Government of Assembly Business.
Honorable members, the question put, be it resolved that this Honorable House extend to the presiding officer and her family and the Chief Secretary and other members of the Tobago House of Assembly and their families season's greetings for a blessed Christmas and God's guidance in the new year. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Those abstaining?
Division.
Councillor Kwesi Devines.
Aye.
Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles.
Yes.
Deputy Chief Secretary Joel Jack.
Yes.
Councillor Nadine Stewart Phillips.
Yes.
Secretary Hayden Spencer. Yes. Secretary Jomo Pitt. Secretary Marcel Melville Jack. Secretary Clarence Jacob. Yes. Councillor Dr. Agatha Carrington. Yes. Assistant Secretary Sheldon Cunningham. Assistant Secretary Marisha Osman. Yes. Assistant Secretary Shomari Hector. Assistant Secretary Ansel Dennis. Assemblyman Fali Augustine. Minority Leader Watson Duke. Minority Councillor Dr. Faith B. Israel. 13 for, 3 abstentions.
The motion is carried. Members, before we move the motion for adjournment, I would like, on my own behalf and on behalf of my family, to wish all members, friends of the legislature, all Tobagonians and listeners alike, a very joyous and happy Christmas and a healthy and productive 2018.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and thank you for your greetings. I wish to move that this House be stand adjourned to a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, the question put is that this House stand adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Any abstaining? The ayes have it. The motion is carried. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.